PLC Network here with another unboxing, this time coming from Hollyland, and this is the Mars M1 Enhanced. It is a wireless video transceiver, and that means it's a lot of things in one actually. It's a receiver, it's a transmitter, and on top of it all, it is a video monitor. So a field monitor for your camera setup. So just consider if you've ever used any of Hollyland's products for their video transmission, their Mars series, for example. You can send and receive video wirelessly, HDMI, sometimes SDI, depending on the model you have. And it comes at a very low latency. So you're not really getting a lot of lag in the video data, which is cool. So if you're shooting from a camera, say to a video village or another location, or someone standing right next to you with some kind of a mobile record kit, you know, they don't have to be tethered to you. They just are receiving the data wirelessly from your camera, which is what this does. Only it's taking two products, your field monitor and that transmitter, and merging it together in one, and also giving it the ability to receive as well. So it's a field monitor that can take or send video wirelessly. It's a cool feature, and it is all packaged into a small little footprint of a product, so that way there's less things going on with your camera, which I'm sure your camera guy would highly appreciate. But since it is a field monitor, it comes with some of the obvious things that a field monitor comes with. For one, you have a 5.5-inch touchscreen screen. It has 1,000 nits brightness, so it is going to be good for indoors and outdoors, although 1,000 can run a little bit lower than some of the brightest options out there, like some of the ones we've covered that can sometimes run up to like 2,800 nits. Those don't even require a hood. For 1,000 nits, you might not see yourself using a hood on this either, or you might use a hood on this, hard to say for sure. So far, from what we've seen with this model, it probably won't require much of a hood unless you're standing just with the sun glaring right into the screen right in your face. But 1,000 nits brightness seems pretty good for what you're trying to achieve. And it runs on its own operating system or software, like any field monitor really is going to do. Only Hollyland calls theirs Holly OS. And you'll find all the typical tools like Zebra, waveform, vector scope, histogram, 3D LUT, anamorphic D-squeeze, and then some. There are a lot of features built into this monitor, just like you'd expect with any field monitor. And for the wireless side of this, it has a line of sight operation for up to 450 feet. And line of sight means, you know, bird's eye view, just a straight line with no obstructions. So if you're inside, there's walls, or if you're in a show, for example, like a convention, and there's all sorts of booths between you and the camera, you might get a noticeable decrease in that distance. But if you're outside and there's nothing blocking the transmission between both the, this and whatever's sending or receiving, you should be able to get up to 450 feet, which is a really good distance. And also not surprising, since Hollyland's products typically offer long distances. And just like any of the other Mars products, it offers that low latency. So the company is saying that this is going to produce less than 0.08 seconds of latency, or which translates, or it'll fall in somewhere around at or under 80 milliseconds. And just like some of their better products, this offers both support for HDMI and SDI in its configuration. And that the HDMI is 1.4 and SDI is 3G. So you're gonna have up to 1080p or 4K depending on your said configuration. When using the HDMI in or the HDMI loop through, you're gonna get up to 4K at 30 frames per second, with the single exception on if you're using this via wireless and you're receiving video from, your whatever's transmitting it from one of the other Mars products that it supports. If that video is being sent over to it in 4K at 30 frames per second, the loop out is going to be limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second. And then the SDI in or loop out is limited to 1080p at 60 frames per second. So pretty much SDI is 1080 and HDMI is up to 4K. And as for those other Mars products from Hollyland that this is compatible with, you're either able to pair this with the Mars Pro series or the Mars 4K series. And unfortunately, that's where we're going to hit a little bit of a brick wall in this conversation, because we do have some of their products on site, but they are just the Mars 400, not the 400 Pro. So these are capable up to, I believe, 1080p, right? Yes, 1080p. and say the same low latency and everything else in this very nice distance in terms of how far it can send. But it's not the Mars Pro or the Mars 4K. So unfortunately, none of the stuff we have here will actually work with this wirelessly. So we can't really test it against that. So we're going to skip that portion of it, and really for the purpose of this content that you're watching now, we're just discussing those specs to let you know what it is capable of, and then we'll plug it in to HDMI and see what it looks like in just a short bit. Now, it offers multiple ways of powering it up, which is incredibly important when you're working with mobile rigs. That way, no matter what a person's rig is, it is compatible with it. Therefore, more users are able to take advantage of this tool and not just the few who fit within a smaller niche. So in this case, you do have the option of using batteries. It is compatible with Sony batteries, specifically the MP-F series, which is quite common with a lot of these products. Or you have the option of going DC out. There is a DC cable inside of the box. So you have those two different options physically on the unit itself. Now, the DC cable that it actually comes with on the other end plugs in via DTAP. So for DTAP, you're going to want a battery that supports DTAP. In our case, we have a lot of these, and we use these a lot for our mobile rigs. And on, these have USB and everything, but they have the DTAP, and or when we're using it for a full setup, it slides into a V-mount locking plate, and that also offers DTAP and powers everything else. So lights, audio, camera, and in this case, screen. And for some reason, if you do not have your DTAP cable on you, and or you just need two different options of plugging into DTAP for whatever reason, you can also use a battery adapter that is just a dummy battery that plugs into the back that has that physical design of a Sony MP-F battery, but a DTAP plug on the other end. So you do have options, but what it comes with is that DTAP to DC cable. Anything else, you're on your own. And then you have an MSRP, which is $499, $500. So for what it does, capable up to 4K in certain scenarios, a really nice field monitor with a bright screen and all the features you expect to find in a field monitor, and it's also a wireless video receiver and transmitter. So you're kind of getting something like this, or at least half of a kit like this, not this one specifically, again, either like the Pro or the 4K, mixed with a field monitor for $500. So compare that to some of the monitors out there, and it's a reasonable deal. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open it up, we're gonna see what it looks like. The first thing that you come across is just a protective glass cover here. So you put that across the front and protect it from scratches. And then you have your unit. And the unit, it's not larger than what you'd expect out of a field monitor. So that's really nice to see. It's pretty small in size. It's your typical 5.5 inch. It's not too thick. Your battery mounts on the back. You have your two antennas up here. They're just knob style antennas, so they just screw right off and screw right back into place. But due to the design of these, you technically shouldn't have to remove these and, go back and forth between putting them on, taking them off, putting them on, taking them off when you're throwing this in your kit, because it's compact and just fits as is in most scenarios. So just keep the antennas where they're at. On the one side of the unit here, you have a USB port, and this is going to be for connecting devices to load 3D LUTs or anything like that. You have, or firmware updates. It is USB-C, but they do also provide a USB-C to USB-A adapter. So if you want to just go USB-A to a thumb drive or something, you can do that as well. You also have headphone monitoring out on the side right here, so that way you can monitor live via headphones without any latency. And then you have one solution for threading this onto your rig. So if you have a mount that has the mount solutions coming in from the side instead of underneath, you'll be able to do that with this coming from the side. And then at the bottom, you have just the one typical mount that comes from the bottom in case you use the bottom mount solution going straight to a hot or cold shoe, or just another rig that supports a bottom mount. And then on the other side, you have two HDMI ports. You have your HDMI in and your HDMI out. And on the back, you have your SDI in, and this is also / your loop out in case you want to loop out of this as your output. So let's say this isn't attached to the camera. You got an HDMI input coming from your source. You're in Video Village or somewhere else, and you're outputting, daisy chaining it to the next device. You can do that via the SDI. And then you have two power ports here for DC. You have your input, which it comes with that cable, like I mentioned. You also have an output for basic accessories, which offers 1 amp or up to 1 amp at 8.4 volts. And then you have a power button, which is in a nice location. So as you're grabbing it, it's just right there in the back corner. It's easy to feel for, and you just press and hold it to turn it on and off. We have a cable here, as mentioned. This is going to be your DC to the back to a D-tap, and I'm going to plug that in right now just to do that. And I'm going to plug that into our battery. In the meantime, get rid of this since we really don't care to look at the Mars 400 since it isn't compatible. And we have confirmed that as well. We tried connecting it to the Mars 400. Again, it's not the Pro or 4K series, it's just the Mars 400 vanilla series, we'll call it, and it is not compatible with this. So we have a D-tap compatible battery, and we're just going to press and hold the button on the back, and the screen comes on. And as that's booting up, we're going to go deeper into the box here just to see what we have. We have a Hollyland We Are Here For You after sales card, which just gives you contact information and everything so you can reach out to them with any kind of thoughts, complaints, comments, suggestions, or anything else. And then you have your packing list, which just tells you everything that you already can see it comes with. So in case you're missing something, you will know. You have a Mars M1 Enhanced Quick Guide and just some FCC required information here that everybody has to include in their packaging. So that's it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to plug it in. So I have plugged it in to our camera feeds. Our camera guy was nice enough to throw me an HDMI here. And this is just a feed from the camera. So now we're seeing everything that our camera guy is seeing and or what you're seeing and or what our preview monitors are seeing. Coming in like this can support up to 4K at 30 frames per second. Again, you can obviously dumb that down and go to 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second, but you have that option up to 4K at 30 frames per second. And then if you're using the loop out, you also have the option for 4K at 30 frames per second. The only time when you're using HDMI in any configuration, again, is if you're using this wirelessly, using the, not this, but the Mars 400 Pro or 4K series, so that way you're not even using the input, you're just taking it wirelessly from another device or sending to another device. That HDMI output or loop through is going to be limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second if that feed is 4K at 30. And then if you, instead of using this HDMI, if you're using the SDI in the back for an input or loop out, that would be limited to 1080p at 60 frames per second. But again, that is SDI 3G, which means it is capable of doing 1080p and not limited to 1080i. So it is definitely a modern product with everything you need for the most part for any given situations. If you're using this with a mobile kit, you're using it in the studio, you're using it for, let's say, a general session for a convention or anything else, and you just have this set up in Video Village and you have SDI and HDMI running all over the place and you just need to figure this into the mix somehow for whatever reason, then you have that ability at least up to 1080p or up to 4K depending on your configuration. Of course, like any field monitor, it's going to have all of its features in its touchscreen. So you're going to have your histogram and waveform, zebra, and everything else in here with easy access. So you got your zebra pattern going here. And then you can quickly turn them all off. And you're able to load in your 3D LUTs and control of that. Again, you got that USB input that's on the side here. And I mean, it's pretty simple. Everything is touchscreen. So here, instead of based on icons, you got text descriptions, you have waveform, histogram, vector scope, zebra pattern, focus assist, aspect mark, 3D LUT, crosshatch, and anamorphic stretch, or not stretch, anamorphic de-squeeze, excuse me. And this gives you access to all the settings for those individual options that you have on your screen and or making use of. You also have a record thing, and that's just kind of like just a quick record, so you can quick record and playback really quickly. This doesn't actually become your recorder or anything like that because it only can record so long, a few minutes, and you can play it back, so it's more for test or whatnot to see how those settings appeal to what you're looking for. And then, of course, you can hit up here and you can go to wireless, and you can switch between wireless and in terms of being a transmitter or receiver, and of course what channel you're operating on with whatever Mars 400 Pro or 4K unit you got paired with this. And of course you have your pair button right there so you can pair it to one of those units. You have your display options here for brightness. You have your system settings here that you can adjust. And then you have some device information so that way you can check firmware or anything else and see what you're working with. So again, the Hollyland Mars M1 Enhanced, which means it is a step above the M1 that's already out. So this is the M1 Enhanced, and it works specifically with the Mars 400 Pro and Mars 400 4K products. Again, this is available for $499, and it is available right now. We will make sure to have links in the description so that you'll know where to find this. Don't forget to follow us and subscribe, as we have a lot of videos out there and many more to come. And of course, if you like this video specifically, tick that like button so that we know that you liked what you saw here. And of course, use the comment section below in case you have any questions for us, or just comments, discussions for us, for each other, or even the manufacturer if they are watching. As always, we thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time. If you want to stay on top of all the latest and greatest, and or at least the gadgets we cover, remember to subscribe right here. Subscription button. Click it. You're going to want to. There's lots of videos, interviews, previews, all sorts of stuff. Button. Click it.